just to give a little bit more background about myself, leadership in general is and academically also an area of interest to me. I also work in a leadership and development company. So this is a topic that I'm very close to. And what I'd also heard from Vijay and everybody. So what I've kind of done in this session today is maybe bring to you some sort of like framework and yeah, some sort of framework. So what I would maybe require from you is that if you want to make it a little bit more discussion based, or if you have like questions and you want to discuss challenges, we can do that as well. So I have a lot of stuff to share with you, which I can go on sharing, but I would love for it to be a little bit more discussion based, where you can share with me your challenges and maybe we can discuss through those. So that's how I've kind of planned for this. I heard that you guys want a little bit more thought leadership on this topic rather than making it a little bit more discussion based. And I'm also happy to do like post this if you find this valuable and you want like more sessions in terms of the fact that you want to go deeper into one of the aspects, or you want to just maybe discuss some issues, we can do that as well. But today it's kind of a little high level, and it's talking about like some basic concept. So that's how I've kind of designed the session today. And because we have 20 minutes, I've just decided to focus on two aspects. One is who, according to me, and the things that I've read is like, how would I define what leadership is, and what are some of the things that kind of make us an effective leader. So those are the things that these are the only two topics that I plan to cover today. But when you'll see that when we talk about what helps you become an effective leader, you'll see that you can actually go deeper into each one of those aspects. So if required, we can do subsequent sessions for that as well. So does this sound okay by everybody?
It's perfect.
Okay, great. So I think I want to first spend some time talking about who is a leader. And I think here, if you're comfortable, you can also use the chat function, or you can just unmute yourself. Maybe I want you to think about somebody who you really admire as a leader, and then what were some of the qualities. It could be you also, or just like in general, according to you, what are some of the qualities a leader needs to have? Um, I'll actually would like to share this question with you all. No pressure. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but if you're comfortable sharing, you can put it in chat or just unmute yourself. Okay, that's also fine. Vijay, do you want to go take a shot at it? I thought you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that maybe we can just give it a few seconds and someone will come. But I can also give it a shot.
Okay.
I think one of the people that I really admired as a leader was a person named Steve Waugh, who captained Team Australia in cricket quite some time ago. And I think the reason that I really enjoyed him to see him captain and to see him lead the side was because of the kind of mental toughness that he showed while making different decisions and going about different situations. So yes, he was someone that I really admired.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think Jaideep's put humility in the chat, and somebody's put Shini's put someone who's able to set an example in bringing out the best in their team. I think your team's quite right there. I probably don't need to take this session, but yeah, I think all that you mentioned are actually great qualities of who a leader is. So essentially, there was an interesting definition that I had read, which stayed a long time with me, and I think it covers some very important aspects. And you can also see I've kind of tried to put my sources. This is actually a book by Harvard Business Review. If in case you want to go deeper into it, I've put the name of that. But how there is Francis Frey and Morris, and how they define someone who's a leader. They feel leader is someone who achieves important goals by empowering others and creating conditions where they can thrive in. And I think here there are three aspects that are very important to cover in this definition. One is achieving important goals. The others also, so you need to as a leader, understand what are the goals that you're rallying your entire team around. So that's an important aspect of who a leader is. And the other is also, I think this is one thing that I think is a very important aspect, the next two ones, which is empowering others. A lot of time, and this is something that I also used to do a lot, and I used to make a big mistake in doing this. I used to think that if I'm the leader, I need to handle everything and I need to be this indispensable person in the situation where, like, the team cannot do without me. But that's actually not the right way to go about it. A true leader is actually somebody who will ensure that, one, with their presence, others are able to flourish, but at the same time they also create certain conditions that without them also they feel empowered enough to achieve the goals that you would be that you as a team are required to achieve. So I think empowering is one of the key aspects of who a leader is. And of course, this is like one overarching definition, and we'll go slightly deeper into it. But I think one of the things that I wanted to bring today was for you to reflect upon a couple of these statements and to think about whether you've done any one of these things. And these could be as small as, you wanted to lead a practice and everybody on your team is coming late to practice, but you did something, and you rallied the team together to ensure that everybody comes to practice. It doesn't matter whether you had the authority or you had the title. In fact, most of the times where people have researched on leadership, what they've kind of found is the true leaders, it's despite whether they actually have an official position or a role in the team or not. And you would have noticed this in your team as well. There's certain people who just show up for certain things and take the onus. And I think that's actually what leadership is. It's actually just showing up and taking the onus to ensure that your team is supposed to achieve, or achieves what they want to achieve. In fact, there was a very interesting story that I can share with you all in this, something that very recently happened, and I was also trying to reflect on it. And just an example of how sometimes we might have the right conditions but we don't show up as leaders. So uh, we basically have a couple of leaders. I'm not going to take any names, but there's a team situation and there are two leaders that are there on the team, and one of the leader actually got injured and they had a very important game to play the next day. So what this other co-captain did was, and it so happened that she also was a female. What this happened, this other co-captain got injured and she came for the match and she stood on the sideline. But what she did was, we had the other co-captain manage the O line, and instead of her managing the D line, she delegated that to somebody else. And it was also like almost her first match that she was going to be leading, but she was injured, she wasn't playing. I don't know what she thought. She thought it might be a good idea for her to maybe sit back and probably just take stats, and she made somebody else the D line captain. And I found that really off. So I went to her and I had a chat with her the next, after a week, because I wasn't there. So I asked her, why did she do that? Like, so, and she really didn't have an answer to that. And while we were talking, she also realized that maybe she was a little hesitant. And I think sometimes we have our own biases about leadership that we feel like we're not up to the mark. And then, of course, there is this huge component of a fear of failure as well. And that's also one of the reasons which leads to a little bit of inhibitions. So according to me, I think one of the key qualities that a leader has, irrespective. So in this example, you can see that the person actually has a role, a designated, legitimate authority on the team, but they're still not showing or becoming a leader. So the kind of role that you have or the designation that you have, that really doesn't determine whether you're a leader or not. What actually determines is whether you can showcase some of these things that are on the screen, which is rally your team around a certain mission. Another important thing is where you can create a sense of unity in the team, where you ensure that, nobody single-handedly feels responsible for a success or a failure. It's even if there's one person who drops something in the universe point and the team loses, it's not about that one person. And it's really easy for that one person to feel like that, but it's the duty of the leader at that moment to ensure that that one person or everybody on the team doesn't feel like that's why they lost the match. The other very important thing, and this has been underscored for a really long time, um, because a lot of people feel like if I pay a lot of attention to what people are feeling, and if I start thinking a lot about other people's emotions, do I end up becoming like a people pleaser, or do I essentially, am I not focusing on the right things, which are the tangible things, which are, whether we're winning games or we're not winning games, which is not essentially true. I think it's very important for a leader to really build that emotional intelligence in order to think about whether they have the capability to understand what the other person's feeling, also then respond to their feelings. Because I think till the time you don't put I think Jedi would have also spoken to you about this, so the time you don't put your team in the right mental space, you will never be able to get the right kind of productive result. So you become a facilitator to ensure that your team's in the right space, and that requires a very high amount of emotion intelligence from the leader. And we can of course go on talking about how should you lead in an emotionally intelligent way, but there, according to me, very simply put, I think there are two elements of emotion intelligence. One is deep empathy, which is you really push yourself to understand what the other person might feel. Empathy simply means putting yourself in the other person's shoes. So how much can you push yourself to really feel whether you can feel the other person's emotions? And I think a step before that, which I should have covered earlier, I think is a very important aspect of self-awareness. So we also underscore the power of reflection a lot. So any times we'll all make mistakes, but every time we make some mistake or we do something good as well, how many times you really self-reflect upon it and think about uh, whether that went well, or why did that went well, what could have I done better to respond to the situation, why did I do something like that? All these kind of questions, they just make you a little bit more self-aware about yourself. And the more you become self-aware about yourself, you will understand other people better. I think this is so I'm also a student of psychology, and for about 3 5 so I studied psychology for 5 years. And I think one thing that that subject taught me was a little bit more about myself. And I realized that if I wouldn't have gone deeper into who I am, it would have taken a very long time for me to understand how others are. Your only understanding vantage point of others can be through you. So the more amount of time you spend in understanding yourself, um, you will understand other people better. And you'll see that this also lays down to another thing that I'll talk about slightly a little later. The third point is about inspiring trust. This is a very, very important aspect again. So this also closely tied with emotional intelligence, but you need to showcase, foster trust in other people, and also ensure other people are trust you. They should always feel. And sometimes I think we kind of this the only time I've seen that people are not able to inspire trust is when they're not being authentic, when they feel like they're too smart and they're able to portray something to the other people which other people won't understand. I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, if they really doubt other people's intelligence and they feel they can manipulate their way through these things. Somebody else, when you're manipulating them, they might not be able to articulate that something is wrong and what is that something that is wrong, but they always get this gut feeling deep down that something is wrong. They might not be able to pinpoint it, but that is one of the biggest barrier to inspiring trust in your team, if you're not being authentic about what is the rationale behind your decisions or intentions and whatever key actions that you take. um, and I think the last one is of course fairness. It's very important to ensure that you're treating everybody with respect and fairness. And I think something that also Jaideep talked about, that humility is a very important aspect. So as you can see here, leadership is not so much about what kind of actions, so to say, you do. It's actually a lot more about how do you um, sorry, leadership is not so much about like what kind of position you hold, but it's actually a lot about how you treat other people and how you respond to them, and how you act around them. So that's these were some key insights that I wanted to share with you, and you can also read some of these statements. Now the interesting thing is there will be days where you might be able to check, put a checkbox against each one of them, but there will be days where you won't be able to do that, and that's completely all right. I think that's where the entire process of being self-aware about it and thinking about it and ensuring that you try to do the better next time, I think it's job half done. So don't worry if you're not able to tick mark each and everything. Another thing that I wanted to talk about leadership, I think it's also something that comes with practice. It's not that, I personally do not believe that it's something that you're born with. When I started doing it the first time, I really messed up. We all really messed up, but I think it's the more you do, and it keeps bringing me back to the same point, that I think if you show up, and I keep using this word show up, but when I say show up, what do I exactly mean by that? I mean that you really take the onus, and you hold the bull by its horn, and you just decide to do it irrespective of what the consequences are going to be. You decide to take action and you decide to take initiative. That's what showing up is. Initiative is actually what showing up is. Until the time you're doing that and you keep practicing your leadership style, you'll keep getting better at it. Now I also wanted to spend some time talking about what leadership is not, because we all have some leadership myths that we think are very important for us to become better leaders. I think the first one is, if you think that somebody who is very charismatic and popular is a good leader, that this was actually one of the frameworks that was prevalent for a really long time, but that's not true. You essentially do not need to be one of the most popular or charismatic people. In fact, some of the most important leaders and very effective leaders are actually some of the most shy people around you. And one of the reasons for that is because they have very high um, emotional intelligence. They really understand people a lot. uh, so it, the this is basically, when you think that somebody is very charismatic or very popular, the moment we see like one or two good things about them, we create a halo effect around them, and we think that they'll have all these XYZ uh, capabilities as well. But that's essentially not the case. You don't necessarily need to be a very strong or charismatic or popular personality to be a good leader. The second one I've already spoken about. It's like you feel like you're born to be a leader. That's also not true. Leadership is not something that comes very naturally. It is something that you need to practice again and again and again. Um, it's, as I mentioned, it's all about taking initiative. It's not like you will, or a person just lands up being born a leader. They might have, if you're seeing somebody who comes to ultimate and you feel like, wow, this person's definitely going to become a leader, it feels like he's born to be a leader, they might have uh, a huge background, a series of events that they would have gone over in their past life, which has made them who they are, or they are probably just doing one of these statements that we've spoken about. And finally, the third one is having all the answers. I think this is also an expectation that we sometimes have from leaders. And what these myths do is that they don't have any harm on others. You are just limiting your own potential if you think that these are the things that a leader needs to have. Uh, you will just always feel like you'll put yourself in a bucket, and you'll always feel like you're not meant for it if you consider these three things a very important aspect of leadership. And I've actually seen a lot of people who fall a lot in the third bucket, where they feel like a leader needs to have all the answers or the solutions to all the problems. That's actually not true. I think that a leader is somebody who spends a lot of time in listening and asking very basic questions, because that is more important to arrive on a solution. So it's okay if you don't have all the answers. It's okay if you I also, another story that I wanted to share here was, I remember I was just maybe not even a year old into Ultimate, and that was the time Jaideep decided to switch cities, and then he was like, "Okay, Suhani, I'm going to leave. You're going to take care of the team." And I had no idea how to do that. I didn't even know Ultimate at that point. I was almost not even a year old into the sport, and it's not like wow, it's a success story. I messed up royally. I remember I'd taken my team to a tournament, and there were a lot of issues that happened with the team to a certain extent that there was somebody who was going to be like, not me, but to another teammate, they wanted to put like a harassment case against them. It was bad. It was really bad. But it wasn't the end of things. I knew there were certain mistakes I had made. I knew there were certain things I could do better. And then I just tried to like think upon it and figure out. So I think when you begin with, you will certainly not have all the answers. And if you go into it thinking, okay, I'm a leader now and I will have all the answers, then you're probably not approaching it in the right manner. So before I get into this last part of my presentation, I've been speaking for a really long time. I'm going to stop sharing for a bit. I just wanted to maybe hear your thoughts. If anybody has any questions or thoughts that they want to share, or anything they don't agree with, or anything they feel like, okay, this made a lot of sense. So this was an aha moment for them.
Yeah. Hi, this is Sam.
It's
Yeah, I just thought the point about the leadership, I mean, not necessarily being a captain or a spirit captain or any particular role, but still being a leader was a very important point that I think we can carry through.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing that.
I
Great. So yeah, go ahead, Vijay.
I think the aspect where you said even to lead, you need to practice. I think that's a very important point. People need to make mistakes in while leading and while captaining to actually grow further, and that is really valid.
Great. I think this one final nuance that I wanted to share, where there are two aspects about the leadership, and we'll shortly go into the two aspects. But here is this one statement that I want you to really imbibe, which is, good leadership depends on you, but it's not all about you. And I think this is where the entire concept of humbleness comes in, where, even when we make mistakes, as in your leadership is not your identity. This is something that you should always think about. Good leadership, if you're a good leader, it really depends on you, but there are a lot of things you need to focus on, but it's not entirely about you. There is a lot of good foundation that you would be responsible for setting, and but there is a bad side of really bad leadership, and we've seen those examples. Like, when you make it all about yourself, you cannot be the face of your team. You have to play a role of a facilitator to ensure that the team is the face of the team. And there's actually a really nice article on HBR, which I really like reading, and I can quickly maybe put the link of it. It's called Humble Leadership. It's actually just a 2 to 3 minute article. If you ever have time, maybe you should read it. I'm just going to post the link in chat. I think this talks about like what kind of leadership really works, and I think especially there are different leadership styles that work in different scenarios. But I honestly think that in an ultimate setting, or especially in a sports setting, and this is written a little bit from a business point of view and leading like businesses and teams, but I think it's applicable even to lead ultimate teams. I think this talks a lot about the kind of role a leader should play. So it talks about the fact that a leader is essentially a facilitator, or so to say. They actually go down to the level where they actually say that the leader is almost like a servant leader, where the only role the role that they play is of service to their teammates, where they need to ensure that everybody's key goals or values are taken into account, and they play the role of the facilitator to help them achieve what they want to achieve. So this is maybe one thing I wanted to talk about. And then when we talk about two aspects of leadership, right, there are two ways that we want to focus. As I mentioned, that it's not about you. There are some things that are outside of you that you need to think about, and then there's some things that are inside of you that you need to think about. So there's an inward focus, and then there's an outward focus. In the inward focus, we've spoken about this. There are some things. What are the things that you need to think about? One is you need to connect with your values and become about and it's completely linked to the second point, where you need to become a little bit more self-aware. And I know I've been talking about self-awareness, but why is the self-awareness important? It's important because when you decide to lead a team, you need to ensure what are the values that you stand for and what are the goals that you stand for. And are your values and goals in line with what your team's values and goals are? So, say, for example, your entire team wants to play ultimate recreationally. They think that ultimate is a sport that they just like to play over the weekends, and they want to maybe go out for beers after that, and they're not aiming to maybe come top 5 or top 10 in the country. Vis-a-vis, you have a value of extreme competitiveness, discipline, and you want to ensure that we always come like in the top 5. If you become a leader of this team, you're going to fail miserably. You're not going to do a good job. You're not going to be happy. Your team's not going to be happy. There'll be a deep disconnect. So you really need to understand, one, what are some of the things and values that you need to talk about, and like you need to define yourself as a leader. And that's an important aspect. As I mentioned, we can go into each one of these, so we can just have like one session on how do you define yourself as a leader. But being aware about what your goals and values are, and then seeing whether the team that you are going to lead, or who you want to invest in as a leader. And remember, when I say as a leader, I don't mean that you want to become a coach or a captain. I mean a team where you want to take initiative. Can there needs to be a connect of values and goals. And finally, the last point is creating a vision. Once you've decided, and this is more for when you have a formal position on a team or you're leading a group of people, there needs to be a vision where you are channeling all their energies and efforts into. If that doesn't exist, and there's a lot of purposelessness, and again, it will lead to a sense where nobody feels that they're achieving anything and people don't feel satisfied. Now, what are some of the outward focus areas where it's not about you? Now it's more about the things that you need to focus outside. Is that you need to ensure that you're always engaging and listening to your team. This is something that I actually find the most valuable thing that a leader can do. Because as I mentioned, ultimately, your key goal is to ensure that you're able to lead your team to achieve a particular goal. But if you don't engage with your team and you don't listen to your team, then you're essentially just leading yourself to achieve a particular goal and not your team. And the other thing is, you might have a shared goal with the team, but if you don't engage and listen to them, you won't understand your teammates and you won't understand what's the best way to get the best out of them. Remember, that's a very important aspect. And I think it's even more important, especially in an ultimate setting, wherein your key role is to ensure. I think a lot of leaders sometimes lead teams where they think they want to uh, call out the best. They want to call the best line and ensure they win that point. But that's not. You need to ensure each one of your teammates will have some strengths. So as a leader, can you identify those strengths, and then can you help your teammates build themselves on those particular strengths? And once you can help each one of them build on their strength, you will see it actually causes it leads to a very beautiful experience where um, they're each contributing, and they're contributing because you engaged and listened to them. This also leads to a lot of building of trust. As I mentioned, when you become a little bit more self-aware, you are authentic, and when you're authentic, you will always lead to building trust. There's actually a trust triangle, and again, I can do like one full session on how do you really build trust amongst your teammates. So if you're interested, we can get into that as well. And finally, the important thing is, of course, a little bit of project management, where we want to ensure that we're not only creating a vision, but we're also executing, taking decisions, and executing on plans. 90% of the times we don't take decisions is because we are scared of failures, which was the first thing that I said, that if you're not making mistakes, you're definitely doing something wrong. So this is the inward focus side, and that's the outward focus side. And the key goal ultimately is to find an effective balance between both of them. And how can you find an effective balance? It's just to summarize everything that we've spoken about. So I've just put this table, and each one of these things we can go deeper into. If you ever wish to do, we can actually do a session on each one of these pointers. So as I mentioned, you need to define yourself as a leader, which is the entire self-awareness part, where you think about what your values and vision is, um, as people are, and how does that connect with that of your teams or your organizations. Second is you need to lead with emotional intelligence, which is manage your own emotions and ensure that you are cultivating positive relationships, you're understanding other people's emotions, and you're able to respond to them. If there is no trust on your team, there is not going to be an improvement towards performance. So you need to create that culture where your teammates trust you and they trust each other and they have mutual respect for each other. Then the third part is about empowerment, to ensure that your team, even without you've basically enabled your team to a level that if you don't make it to a tournament, they can run by it. And I think this was something, I remember in national camp, we were told a lot that there could be a situation where your coach is not able to travel with you. How are you going to do it? And I feel that they'd reached a level where if our coaches were not able to travel with us, we would figure our way out. And I think that's what empowerment is, where you make your team so self-sufficient that they can do it. And this is the last point, is actually a newer point which has come in the leadership framework now because of the pandemic and so many hybrid situations that we have to be in, which is, if you don't live in the same space, can you still build that connect with your team and ensure that you're able to sustain the same relationships on the team?
I had one thing to ask you. So, as a female, what challenges did you face leading the team?
Okay, that's a good point. I personally don't like to bring. Let me think about how to answer that question. So, as I think I would like to answer some of these questions of what I faced as a person, like the challenges that I faced as a person. Now, because I'm a female, you could say that those were challenges but I really think that people face challenges in their leadership style, not because of, like a little bit about their gender. I don't think I've come across a situation where I've felt um intimidated, so to say, because that person's a boy and I'm a girl. But it has been a lot. One is in terms of experience, right? I think that intimidated me initially a little bit, where I thought that because I don't have so much experience, or because the same thing that I was talking about, that I don't have the answers. I really thought that a leader is somebody who should know everything. So that was one of the first challenges that I faced, where I had to come over that barrier, that it was okay to commit mistakes. And I think it is slightly linked to this. I had this fear that nobody should be upset with me. I think that's one of the key challenges that I faced initially as a leader. But I realized after a point in time that there's never a chance where everybody is happy with you. You have to kind of ensure what's in the larger interest of the team, and understand, of course, that does not mean that you ignore people who might have um, some issues or concerns. It's about making them feel that their issues and concerns are addressed, which does not mean that I have to solve for them or I have to do what they're asking me to do, but really share with them authentically why I think I took that decision, or why I think this decision is important. So I think and it takes time. Till the time you don't believe in yourself or you build that credibility, there's this notion of people pleasing that starts to come into play, where you want to make sure that you're keeping everybody happy because you think that's what good leadership is. I think this was the second challenge that I faced a lot, uh, which took me quite some time to get over. Even sometimes I still feel that I tend to go on that side.
Thank you.
Suhani, I have a question. I
Yeah, go
just
ahead, Sam.
was, I wanted to know, how do you balance your leadership duties with your own like personal development or other factors of your game or your life? How does that balance with your
That's
leadership?
a very interesting question. Uh, I don't know if I have an answer to that question, because I'll be very honest with you. I felt like since in 2015 when Jaideep left till date, I have been like playing some sort of the other leadership role on the team, and and then and I haven't had a chance to really think about myself. So this is actually that 1 year where I'm trying to really not take a leadership role. And one of the reasons that I also realized why I'm feeling like this is because sometimes when you become this one of these veterans on the team, so to say, when you've been with the team for a really long time, I can see Vijay smiling, you just end up taking initiative. And that's what I said, that this is what leadership is all about, right? That you have to take that initiative. But sometimes, like, this is another paradigm to it, that when sometimes you end up taking so much of an initiative, you don't realize that maybe you are uh, being a deterrent into somebody else's empowerment. There could be other people uh, on the team now who need to start like showing up a lot more. And that's also a good leadership style, and that's probably the right action that you should take sometimes, is to step back and ensure that you showcase trust and you let people do what they want to do, because they're the leaders of the team now. I don't know if I'm entirely answering your question, but I've been struggling with this for a really long time, where I feel like but I don't think this is how it should be, wherein I feel like when you're leading the team, it does take away little from your game and you focus a lot on the team, which is true. I also think that that's what leadership is, right? You're focusing on everybody to ensure that you're the facilitator of that unit, and to ensure that they achieve their goals. So your focus on yourself depletes a little, which is okay. I think it is a good trade-off to make for that one time. But you should be honest with yourself. Like right now, I feel like I can't do it anymore. I need to focus a little bit around my need this 1 year where I'm not taking any initiative. Um, and I'm giving myself that space. I don't know if this will be the right way to do it. So maybe 2-3 years down the line, I'll come back to you and be like, okay, I think this is the right answer. But I actually don't have an answer for that question, to be very honest. It's something that I think you have to figure out. And with all these softer nuances like leadership, like science and everything, you can have a balance and you can have a perfect answer to a question. But these softer aspects, I think everybody will have their own answer, and you have to kind of go through it, trial and error, and see what works best for you. What honestly works best for me is taking breaks. Like I think like now I need to take a break. I want to focus on myself. I will do that and not do something like this. But when I'm doing my leadership qualities, then I am not thinking so much about what my point of view is. It's all about what the team's point of view is. I think that's how I kind of strike a balance.
Hi, Suhani, Gaurav here.
Hi, Gaurav.
Hi. Suhani, you threw some light on earlier on in the conversation that when stepping into a leadership role, the kind of privileges and the visibility that the person gets, it's very easy to kind of get lost in that domain and kind of become the face of the team.
Yeah.
Could you throw some more light on some examples by sharing some examples on how to be a facilitator more than actually be considered to be the face for everything?
That's a good question. I think the point comes down again to humbleness, and I'm just thinking about some tangible examples that I can give you. Yeah, I think, see, I don't know, I can't think of any like tangible examples, so to say, but it's just that you wanna, if we can drive this thing in everybody's mind in our team, and more so in the leader, wherein we ensure that every success or failure is attributed to uh never one person. It's always about the team. And I think some of the examples are things like somebody makes a really good grab in the last point of the game, in the universe point, or somebody drops it. We end up feeling like that's the person who's responsible for the win, or that's the person who's responsible for the loss. But the fact that your team reached the universe point is also, we forget all of those things. So I think things that can really help a leader to ensure that they're not making it all about themselves or even about that one person. It's actually sometimes we, even as leaders, we're like, oh my god, this person did. Of course we should appreciate it, but we shouldn't let anybody become the face of the team. And I think some ways that we can do that is by reframing or re-articulating certain situations to our teammates, providing them a lens to view a situation, providing them a, a view to a situation that they didn't have otherwise. Like if you feel like everybody in your team is viewing a situation in a manner, can you push your team to think about something in a different way? And I think the other key point which you're asking, if I'm getting this right, is what if you start going on a major power trip, which is also sometimes I've seen some people do. Like now they've become the captain, they feel like it's all about themselves. I think one is have an honest conversation with that person if you feel like they're going on a big power trip and they feel like it's all about them. The other thing that I would also urge, if you start feeling like that, I would really urge you to like do some sort of self reflection or talk to people, see, just ensure that, you know, are things that you're doing sitting well with your team. We can always gauge what kind of you'll always get a feeling when something's going wrong or something's going right. So I think maintaining a dialogue with your team is very important, wherein you make sure that you provide a situation to your teammates where they feel that you're extremely approachable. This is also a very important thing. If you don't, we expect a lot of honesty from our team, but you also, as a leader, you have 50% of that onus to ensure that you provide an environment where people can be completely honest with you. If they're not being honest, then there's also something that you're doing that they're not being able to be honest with you. So I think these are some of the situations. I don't know if I've been able to give you like very tangible examples, but just reflection and conversations can help.
No, I think this was really wonderful, Suhani. Both the examples that you touched upon, in fact, you kind of read through the lines and you went further and explained your perspectives. And I think more than answers, I resonate with conversations. So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing this.
Most welcome. Thank you for having me. I loved speaking with all of you.